I was flat on my back, barely able to reach for a glass of water, when 3 small children appeared on my front porch like someone had simply forgotten to take them back inside. My mother had driven away before I even made it to the window, and the only explanation she left behind was a text message that read like a command from someone who had never once considered that I might be a person with limits. What happened over the next 3 days would unravel something I had been carrying my whole life, and by the time my mother walked back through a church fellowship hall, tanned and smiling with a fruit tray in her hands, the entire town already knew the truth she had tried to bury under the word emergency. To understand that weekend, you have to understand who I am inside that house. My name is Delia Marsh. I am 34 years old, and the house on Sycamore Lane belonged to my grandmother before it belonged to me. Her name was AITA, and she raised 3 children in those rooms, buried a husband from that front door, and spent the last 2 years of her life letting me take care of her the way I take care of everyone. I am a certified nursing assistant. I have spent 11 years helping other people climb out of beds they may never leave, holding hands in the dark at 2 in the morning while nobody from their families answered their phones. With AITA, the work was never work. It was the only place in my life where love moved in both directions. She was the only person who ever asked me if I was okay, and then actually stayed quiet long enough to hear the answer. When she passed 2 years ago, she left me the house. My mother called it favoritism. I called it the first time in my life that someone had chosen me without needing something in return. There was one thing I had not done yet. Out at Fairview Memorial, Ida's grave still carried the temporary tin marker the funeral home plants in the ground while families arrange for something permanent. I drove past it once a week and told myself I would take care of it soon. Hold on to that detail, because everything that happened that weekend eventually circles back to that small piece of metal pushed into the grass above her name. Mika misten pandan faman. My back gave out on a Tuesday at the care center where I work. A resident named Mr. Calloway started to lose his footing in the corridor, and I did the thing every nurse and aide knows you are never supposed to do alone. I caught him. Something in my lower back tore loose with a brightness that is hard to describe to someone who has never felt it. My doctor put the scan images up and pointed to 2 vertebrae near the base of my spine. He told me no lifting above 10 pounds, no bending, no twisting, and signed me off work indefinitely. I went home and settled into the couch with a heating pad, some medication, and the reasonable expectation that I would spend the next several days resting. That expectation lasted exactly 2 days. On the morning of the 3rd day, my phone lit up on the cushion beside me. The message was from my mother. "We have an emergency out of town. Watch them." That was the entire explanation. No names, no details, no question mark at the end. I typed back the only honest response I had. "I cannot. I am injured." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Before she had even replied, I heard gravel crunching in the driveway. By the time I got to the window, her SUV was already in reverse. 3 children stood on my porch. Ren, my oldest niece, was 8 years old and gripping a rolling suitcase that came up nearly to her shoulder. Sela was 6 with a backpack strapped to both shoulders. And Tessa, who had just turned 3, was sitting on the top step with both hands in her lap because nobody had told her where to go. My sister Bryn leaned across from the passenger seat. "They are good kids. They will not be any trouble. Mom will explain. Love you." Then the SUV disappeared around the corner, and a booster seat sat tipped over on my lawn, and that was the entire goodbye. My mother's follow-up text arrived seconds later. "Save the excuses. Family helps." I wrote back that my doctor had specifically said 10 pounds maximum. I wrote back that Tessa alone weighed nearly 4 times that. The dots appeared and disappeared twice before she stopped responding. I called her phone directly and reached her voicemail. I stood in my doorway, holding the frame because my back would not let me stand freely, looking at 3 children who needed things I was physically unable to provide. Ren glanced around the porch with the calm assessment of someone who had been through this kind of situation before. "Are we staying for 3 whole days?" Nobody had told me 3 days. Grandma said they were going swimming, Sela announced cheerfully. "Just Grandma and Mommy, not us," and Ren added, almost quietly. "Mommy said not to tell Daddy where we were going this time." Her father, a man named Jonah, had been in and out of their lives in a pattern that had shifted over the past 2 months. He had shared custody, and then, quietly, the visits had stopped. The kids were always sick or busy or something had come up. There was a swimsuit on my kitchen table when I helped Ren unpack, and an 8-year-old telling me her mother had asked her to keep a secret from her father. Neither of those things sat right with me. I got all 3 children to sleep that night, then sat in the dark with my heating pad and ran backward through my entire relationship with this family. Every holiday I had hosted while Bryn arrived empty-handed and left early, every dollar I had contributed without being asked. Every time I had rearranged my life because someone said the word family, and the understanding had been that I would simply do it. I could not find a single memory where any of them had asked what I needed first. I scrolled to a contact name I had been quietly told we did not use. Jonah picked up on the first ring, careful and still. I told him where his kids were. I told him I was injured and could not physically care for them properly. I told him there was apparently an emergency somewhere out of town, but that nobody had told me what kind. The silence that followed was long and deliberate. Then he said, "There is no emergency, Delia. She just did not want me to have them this weekend." He told me he had been documenting every canceled visit for 2 months because something had felt wrong and he had wanted to be able to prove that he had tried. Then he asked the question I could not answer. Where did she say they were going? Jonah arrived the next morning at 9. Sila saw his truck from the window and screamed his name at a volume that probably reached the next block. Tessa ran at him with both arms raised straight above her head, the universal toddler request that means pick me up and do not put me down. He caught her without a word and swung her onto his hip like she weighed nothing at all. As he buckled Tessa into her seat, Ren said from the back, "Grandma told us we would be at the beach house by now." Jonah went completely still for just a moment, then looked at me across the roof of the truck. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to say that the silence had not already covered. After they left, I texted my mother one plain question. "The kids are with Jonah. Where are you exactly?" It showed as read at 9:12 in the morning. No response came. I went looking. Months earlier, Bryn had added me to a group text about a June beach trip. A few weeks after that, she had written that they might cancel because money was tight. I had replied no worries and forgotten about it entirely, but they had not canceled the trip. They had canceled me. I searched my email archive for anything she might have forwarded and found a confirmation for Coral Bay Resort in Gulf Shores, a 3-night reservation. The dates matched exactly the 3 days I had just spent lying on my couch while children I could not lift ate cereal for dinner because I could not stand at the stove long enough to cook. My name had been listed as one of the 3 guests on that original booking. They had not replaced me with someone else. They had simply gone without telling me. My phone buzzed with a message from my coworker Denise. "Isn't that your mom and Bryn in the background of Marlene Cobb's pictures?" Marlene, a woman from our church who had been on the same trip, had posted a public album from that exact resort on those exact days. In one photo, my mother sat beneath an umbrella in a sun hat, a drink in one hand. In another, Bryn floated in a pool with sunglasses pushed up on her forehead. The caption read, "Living our best life, girls' trip." Denise followed it with a second message. "Also, why is your mom on the prayer chain?" Our church sends out the prayer chain for real emergencies. My mother had submitted our family to it that same morning, citing an urgent situation out of town and asking the congregation to pray. Then Corrine, who coordinates the chain, called me directly. She asked if everyone was all right because the fellowship was bringing food to the church on Sunday for the family's return. Sunday. My mother and sister were driving home Sunday into a hall full of people who had been praying over their emergency and cooking to welcome them back. I printed 4 pages and drove to church on Sunday morning. The fellowship hall was warm and crowded. 40 people at least, casseroles covering every table, a card making its way around the room for everyone to sign. Jonah was there with the kids in their church clothes, and I understood without asking that he had heard things too. My mother walked in behind a fruit tray, tanned from 3 days of coastal sun, and my sister followed her, and the room shifted in a way that had nothing to do with the door opening. Too many people had already seen Marlene's photos by then. My mother felt the change in the air and came straight at me. "There she is. Do you want to explain handing my grandchildren over to that man and getting the whole town whispering about our family?" I said, quietly. "What was the emergency, Mom?" My sister, apparently not yet aware that the photographs were already circulating through half the congregation, said sharply, "Do not act like we committed a crime. We booked that trip months ago. We were not about to waste it babysitting." The word dropped into the room like something breaking on a hard floor. Pastor Ames cleared his throat gently. He mentioned that Marlene had shared some photographs that week and asked whether there had perhaps been some misunderstanding. I laid the pages on the table between a ham and a dish of sweet potatoes, the resort confirmation with my name on it. The prayer chain message time-stamped the morning they left. The deposit receipt dated the same week I had transferred $1,200 to my mother from my grandmother's headstone, and I said it plainly. There is still no headstone. Her grave has a tin card in the grass. The money I sent for Ida's stone helped pay for a beach house. The room did not erupt. It went quiet in a different direction entirely. Someone near the back said, "Lord have mercy," in a voice barely above a whisper. My mother reached for the last thing she had. "How could you do this to your own mother, in church of all places?" I said. "I did not do this to you. You did this." I stopped covering it. I am done being this family's spare set of hands. Then I walked out, and my neighbor Holly held the door for me on the way through. The truth did not remake everything overnight. The story that circulated by Monday was that I was bitter and jealous and had ripped 3 innocent children away from their mother out of spite. I was left off the Thanksgiving list. But some things changed that actually mattered. Jonah has his children on a real, consistent schedule now, because Bryn could no longer manufacture excuses once the truth had been spoken in a room full of witnesses. A few weeks later, he sent me a photo of the 3 of them piled together on his couch, watching something on television. An envelope arrived at my house with my name spelled unevenly in purple marker. Inside was a drawing of 4 stick figures under a yellow crayon sun, 3 small ones and 1 taller one, all holding hands. My mother made one more attempt. About a month later, a text arrived saying her back was bothering her and asking who else she could call. A year earlier, I would have been in my car before I finished reading it. This time, I typed back that I hoped she felt better soon, set my phone face down on the counter, and noticed that my hands were completely steady. I bought Ida's headstone myself, gray granite, paid in full from my own account. The day they installed it, I sat in the grass beside it for a long time. I told her that she had been the only person in my life who asked if I was okay, and then waited for the real answer. I told her I was getting there. The light came down soft and warm through the trees above her stone, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I was not waiting for anyone to come and ask. There was a Saturday that fall when Jonah dropped the kids off, and the house was loud again, the good kind of loud. I watched Wren moving through the kitchen the way I used to move through every room I entered, capping markers before they dried, nudging a cup back from the table edge without interrupting her own conversation. When Tessa reached for a crayon near the edge of the counter, Wren said, "I have got her before anyone else had moved." I recognized that sentence. I had been saying it my whole life. When Tessa knocked over her water a few minutes later, Wren was already up, already apologizing on Tessa's behalf, as though the spill were somehow her fault to carry. She looked at me and said, "But somebody has to help." And it nearly took the air right out of my lungs, because it was the truest thing I had believed at her age, and also the biggest lie I had ever swallowed whole. I turned my chair toward her and said what I needed someone to say to me a very long time ago. Helping because you love someone is one of the most beautiful things there is, but helping because you are terrified they will stop loving you if you do not, that is not caring, baby. That is just being afraid. You do not ever have to be afraid of that with me. I am going to love you whether you clean up that water or leave it right there on the floor until morning. For 34 years I had confused being needed with being loved. They are not the same thing. Being needed is a job with no time off and no one who asks how your shift went. Being loved is someone looking up when you walk into a room and asking how you are, and then actually staying to hear it. I know the difference now. And I am never going to let a child in my house forget which one she already has.